Hope everybody's doing okay. I got a request to do this video about 2 weeks ago. I planned to have it out a lot sooner, but I was sick for a while and just had other stuff going on, so it got delayed a little bit. Specifically, somebody wanted me to explain um Haitian voodoo and the possibility of being possessed um by demons during the voodoo and having a pregnancy, and basically have a fusion of the demon and the person. And I'm going to talk about that. And among other things, I figured since I was going to make a video about this, that I might as well go over all the different types. Well, there's obviously probably going to be a few missing. I just didn't think about writing down. But all the different types of demonic hierarchies from different cultures, because a lot of people don't understand that there's different varieties, different tiers, I guess you can say, and just different categories of these entities. And that's what it talks about in the book of Ephesians in verse 12. It's a very famous verse, but a lot of people don't understand exactly what it's talking about. Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. And um, in the band full verse, it also says governors if you have the Ethiopian Bible or the Geneva Bible, but King James the Sixth of Scotland took it out for political reasons. That's one of the main verses that was changed. And see, that verse is describing the hierarchy of demons and fallen angelic beings. Um, so I'm gonna get through as much as I can and try to explain most of the hierarchy and the way these things appear differently in different cultures. It's very odd and I wouldn't say interesting in a good way, but it's very different how many different varieties there are of these things. So I'll just start with the basic shadow demons. Those are things that you might see when you wake up um during sleep paralysis, and you see a shadow, a tall shadow, usually around 6 to 8 feet, and usually the corner of your room. At least that's the way it was for me when I suffered with sleep paralysis. Thank God of that. He delivered that. That he delivered me from that about a year ago. And then you have an invisible demon, which again is lower on the hierarchy. That's when you just feel like a very evil presence around you, but nothing is visible. No poltergeist activity, nothing like that. Then you have the incubus and you have the succubus, and this is when it starts getting um, it can start getting kind of bad. So the incubus rapes women in their sleep. They're usually they're they're disgusting, but they metamorph into whatever the woman finds attractive, because these demons know in our mind what we find most attractive. So in their dream, they will come to them as a man, and if the woman isn't protected by Christ and has the anointing of Jesus Christ around her, that thing will rape her in her sleep. And I personally believe, and there's evidence that when you get raped in a dream by these demons, that it can produce another demonic seed into this world. And then you have the succubus. It's the same concept, except it portrays itself as a woman, and usually if the man ejaculates during the dream, then he did have some type of sexual interaction with the succubus, and it's unknown how if the succubus can breed or not. I lean towards kinda because demons have to be breeding somehow, because I know that there wasn't millions to billions or hundreds of millions of Nephilim on the earth. Um, Now we get into ascended masters, which I've talked about a lot, which pretty much became a thing. Well, the term became a thing during Guy Ballard's cult, but it's pretty much what the Theosophical Society started. These beings that claim to be hundreds and years old, sometimes 500, sometimes 1,000, and they look. Most of them look kind of like a human, but just very perfected. But sometimes they can look. They can also look very otherworldly too. It's not really a cut and dry type of thing. Um, Now I'll get into the Haitian voodoo a little bit. So the Loha is the basic type of Hindu demon, and I mean Haitian voodoo. Sorry, and they'll take all these psychostriptic drugs to get themselves connected to the spirit world. Um, Specifically, I know ayahuasca, coyote, DMT, and they'll instead of just communicating, they'll purposely get themselves to try to become one with these things, and they think that they're their ancestors because that's what they're taught, but they're absolutely not their ancestors. The things manifesting as demons, and in their culture, they are a little bit different, which it's just odd that there's so many different things on this hierarchy. But pretty much, I was asked if they're taken over by one of these things, what they call Loa, and if they're pregnant, if the demon could fuse with the kid during birth. And I would say it's definitely possible. And then when I get down the list and talk about other things, it'll make more sense of how it can happen. And then in Haitian voodoo, um, they have demons that they call buhas, and they're these very strange, mutilated type of demons. And to them, it seems like they view the loas as the good ones, and the buhas as the evil ones, but they don't understand that they're all evil, unfortunately. And now there's also the Mahatmas, and these are also high level, possibly fallen angelic beings. This is what Madame Blavatsky was in contact with when she started the Theosophical Society and wrote The Secret Doctrine and Isis Unveiled. She was specifically in contact with Elmoira and Kuthumi, and it's possibly Saint Germain as well if the picture is not fake. And the Mahatmas claim to be hiding out in Shambhala in Tibet, and she claims to have gone there to meet them. And I've said this many times, but Theosophy and Helena Blavatsky is what inspired Hitler. There's rumors that she even went to meet him and C introduced him to these ascended masters. And C, I've said this many times, but C was the one that started that junk about the Aryan race, and he became obsessed with it. Anyways, the Mahatmas usually look like um they're from somewhere from the Middle East, have turbans over their head. But I'll put the pictures up there. And they were also called Masters of Wisdom too, which Alice Bailey called the one that C mostly channeled, known as Dejwa Kul, which wrote her most famous book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, which is a very evil manuscript. And familiar spirits. So, familiar spirits is a demon that pretends to be your loved one. And while these are still on the lower end of the hierarchy, they are very dangerous because they trick you mentally. Like I've I can't express how crushed I am still about my mother dying about 3 years ago. And of course there's always that feeling of how bad I wish I could communicate with her. But we cannot open that door because that little crack can lead to just an explosion of demonic activity and ruin our lives. And um, be very careful about talking at the gravestones because that can open a door too. Now, animism objects. And a lot of people don't seem to really know about animism. So, animism is where somebody implants a part of their soul into an object, or they'll put a demon inside of an object. It's normally a stuffed animal or a doll, but in other strange cases it can be something else too. If it's an inanimate object, I would say mirrors is probably the number one thing, and they are known to like clocks, but it it can be in anything literally. Now possibly one of the highest on the hierarchy that not many people know about is the secret chiefs. So the ascended masters are the is the physical extension of the secret chiefs. The secret chiefs hold pretty much the most power in the hierarchy, but they don't have physical bodies to come down here. The secret chiefs are demonic entities in the cosmos, and the way they get you is completely manipulating your mind, putting you in a time paradox. I know somebody that had an experience after buying an occult book that that at the time proved to be too much for the soul to handle, and it was an experience like he never had before. And these things are completely real; they're not made up. And H.P. Lovecraft labeled them as the old ones. Then there's something called Preta, um, which is a hungry demon, which is as bad as it sounds. It's talked about in Buddhism and in Hindu cultures. And these things can get inside of you like a parasite. Now there's a parahuman, which is kind of something that's in between, not a human, but human-like, um, human-like, tendencies, but has the intellect of something beyond human. For example, the Iwas, the thing that automatically wrote the Book of Law over Crowley's shoulder. That was considered a parahuman. Now we're gonna get to Stoicions, and a lot of people don't know what Stoicions are. And they're considered the elemental spirits, and there's four. There's like water, earth, wind, fire, wind. No, earth, water, fire, wind. Yeah, and the main one is the water, which is called the Undines, and I'll be talking about the specific ones here in a second. But take notice at all the states that are known for a beach and water has a very very high um crime rate. A lot of gangs, a lot of people on drugs very bad, a lot of cults, just very very sinful places because there's so many places for these unions to just gather at. They're also known as marine spirits, but they consist of things like Oridices, Nerides, Limonades, Naiades, or just water spirits, sea maids, sirens, which is actually what mermaids are, but a lot of people don't know that. Potomides and Mamiwatas, and there is more, but that pretty much all needs to be wrote down. And then the fire stochions, which again is elemental spirits, are known as salamanders. And because fire, there's not really as much of that element. There's really not really much variety of them. And it's said that the most powerful salamander demon is known as Sahachi. And then there's Earth Stosions, which there is somewhat a variety of, um, and you'll find these in in places where there's a lot of grass, a lot of flowers, a lot of trees, stuff like that. And the overall word is gnomes. Just like how with fire the overall word is salamanders, the overall word for the earth spirits stosions is gnomes. And there's sylvesters, satyrs, meaning the half goat, half human, pans, dryads, hamadryds, Daedalus, elves, and brownies. Now we'll get to the Aristoteans, and the overarching name for them is called sylphs. They're known as Paraldas. Paralda is known as the leader, and the females are called sylphids. and there's nymphs. So not to be a variety of them, but and any of those things does have a possibility of getting into you. That's why wherever you go, you have to believe that the protection of Jesus Christ is in you. And I recommend prayer cloths. Not many people know about them because they're only in the Bible in one area. But prayer cloths anointed with organic olive oil with no additional ingredients do help tremendously. Now I'm going to talk about alcohol because a lot of people don't understand that they're called spirits for a reason. Um, because and also alcohol means body eating spirit. It also comes from the word spiritus. The same thing means spirit, and each type of liquor or alcohol is a different type of demon. And people make the argument, well, Jesus turned the water into the wine. Well, see, what people don't know is back then, wine was also used the same way as grape juice or organic grape juice. And in that verse, when it talks about turning the water into wine, when it talks about how the best was saved for last, the best batch was always known as the non fermented organic grape juice, because our Lord Jesus Christ would not have got people drunk, because that means he would have sinned. And also, most just about every alcoholic drink, specifically vodka, but it's in most of them, is wormwood. So that's to tell you about everything you need to know. And since not many people know about them, I'm gonna touch on the Yoruba demons. Not many people really know about them at all, but they're kind of like the gods of the Santeria religion, or or Palomayambe, which is the more demonic side of Santeria. One of the main ones is Osun. Then you have yokais, which is these Chinese type of monsters. Then you have the hybrids that are still on the earth that people see all the time. They're demonic creatures. And while not all of this stuff can go into your body, because fallen angels that have an actual spirit that you can touch, they cannot go inside of you. But possessing can be in more ways than entering your body. Mentally, it can possess you. That's what the ascended masters do. They get in your head. First, they'll be nice to you for a certain amount of time. Then, for people that don't really know, they'll think that they have to listen to them because they're some type of angel from God. Then they get them to do horrible things. Same thing with all these different false gods from different cultures. Um, People think that they have to listen to them because they don't have any solid belief system and they don't have the Holy Spirit in them. So then there's Jinn, which is debatable if they're actually real or not. I'm open to the possibility of it because all that a jinn is what the Muslims believe is a form of a demon. Be a jinn means genie, and they believe that they're in the form of smokeless fire, which I believe that they might be a thing, because if all these other things can be real, then then they could easily be a type of salamander spirit. There's really there's really no reason for me not to believe it, in my opinion. Then there's skinwalkers, which is when witches um go in possess an animal, and then they can use their type of magic while they're in the animal form. Or then people have talked about these unknown superiors, which is kind of like an ascended master, but they come to people more of a human form and claim to be their spirit guide and all that nonsense. And then there's the archons, and like I said, I'm an open-minded Christian, so I'm going to have talks about stuff like this. The archons is talked about mostly in Gnostic texts, and they're basically things that demons that are trying to get people strapped in uh in this world that they believe is fake. I don't believe any of that. I don't believe the world is fake. But I am open to believing that there's high-ranking spirits known as archons just out to deceive us. I um I think it's possible. We should not dismiss things as being a possibility just because we don't believe in that exact belief system. Then there's Orisas, which is different Santeria demons. And people in Santeria, they don't think that these things are bad. And I want to reiterate again that Santeria is also related with the Catholic Church. All these Catholics think um that are always into demonic stuff, always, because it's a satanic religion. Then there's the Greys, which is the basic um aliens, so-called aliens, but they're actually demonic entities, and they're not they're interdimensional. They're not from other dimensions or anything ridiculous like that. But sometimes they will abduct women specifically. This well, they abduct men too, but women, they will do things to them, and the woman will wake up, and it like all this stuff will come out of her, like she had a baby, but nothing is there, and I believe that could be a way of birthing a Nephilim, because Watchers did it back in the Bible. How do we know that these aren't Watchers doing it again? But I also do want to say, um, the women that got raped by um the Watchers or different angelic beings, and that did not ask for it to happen, that did not entice it. God will not hold it against you if you did not want it to happen. Then there's the Nordics. They're the ones that look like a lot like us, but have the real long white hair and just look like a very superior version of a human. Then there's the Draconians. They're the rarest. They're the shapeshifters that you always hear about. Specifically the reptilians. And while they can't go into you, but they can have sexual relationships with you, which you'll probably be very lucky if you did not become corrupted by that. And it's one of the more dangerous things in the hierarchy. So Bhut Veda, that's a shape-shifting demon in Hindu culture. Now, a lot of these things in other cultures we can still see it because, and I'll tell a little story. When I was out here one night about a year and a half ago with my friend, maybe about 2 years ago, when my ex fiance lived here and she was back in my bedroom, um, and I don't believe she lied to me about this because this is when we was on good terms. She said that me and my friend was out here one night, probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock, that something manifested that looked exactly like me and just stared at her while she was in bed. And she kept saying my name because she thought I went back there to tell her goodnight. And it just stared at her in a very creepy way. And it just kind of disappeared like mist. Because a lot of these things that are just called different names overseas can still come to us. That's why I decided to take the time to talk about these ones from overseas, because maybe we could give some people some closure and ideas of how to get rid of these things. And if somebody needs help getting rid of these things, please comment and I will find a way to have you reach out to me, because that's the whole point of all of this, that and education. Then there's asuras, which are Hindu power seeking demons. And I do want to say there is a lot more of these demons over in Asia, Africa, South America than there is over here, because there's really, other than like the cults, high ranking masonry, other cults on the hierarchy, and some witches here and there. There's really not that much serious demonic activity going on over here as it is over there. The way it is here, you have a few extremely powerful um, occultists doing their thing, but over there you have the majority of the continent doing voodoo and stuff. That's why there's so much more over there. So you also have the Astar Command, which I've talked about um, quite a lot in other videos for different reasons. And this Astar Command first made contact with the man, I believe, George Adamski. I'm positive about the last name. I believe it's George Adamski. Um, I'll pull it up if I'm wrong. I know it's Adamski though. And he claimed the Astar Command took him to the moon and took him to other planets in their spaceship and all this stuff. He's still very popular in the UFO community. Now, we can't go to the moon or other planets because of the firmament, but they can trick you with visions. And even if he was not possessed by Astar, because supposedly Astar is some type of physical manifestation, and I believe Astar is Astaroth from the Bible, which is mentioned several times. I'm not going to get into all that right now, but it's a very big deception. And there's also George Van Tassel that was contacted, I believe, by the Astar Command, and that's when they started building that Integratron. And the people still talk about that to this day, about 70 years later. Um, then there is the Great White Brotherhood, which is a whole different set within the Astar Command, with a different fleet of spaceships or motherships, claiming to have Sanat Kamara, who claims to be the Christ, which is obviously a fake counterfeit of Jesus Christ. And Sanat is an anagram for Satan because he just got to rearrange a few letters. And these, like I'm going to reiterate one more time, these motherships, they are real, but they're not from other places. They cannot go past the firmament. They hide out in the atmosphere and appear when they want to. Okay, so Daityas, which are Hindu giant demons, which I believe is probably the same thing. Like over here, the remnants of the Nephilim, well, they're not Nephilim anymore. They would be the Rephaim, the Zanjumim, or the Anakim. And I imagine that a lot of them went to Hindu, India, and that's why they're seeing them. And I believe it's the case of the same thing with a different name for that one. And Anunnaki. So a lot of people get the Anunnaki very wrong. They think that it's aliens that created the earth and all that junk, but that's not the case. The Anunnaki is the continuation of the Anakim from the Bible, and a lot of people believe that they were the hybrid pharaohs of Egypt, which I believe is somewhat believable because those pictures of them having different um, animal heads as faces, that's not a myth. That's completely true. For people that don't watch my videos, listen to it this way. Back then, probably about 5,000 years ago at least, like your life was just hoping that you had food to eat the next day, or walking miles in hopes to find water, and maybe even not find any, or just have to find some puddle of dirty water just to hope you'll survive another day. Nobody back then would have taken the time to draw all of these hieroglyphics with pictures of all these different deities. They were they were either forced to or they wanted to because they worshiped these things. Then there's Pishakas, which are Hindu flesh-eating demons. And like I say, in the Hindu culture, they don't want to understand it. They don't want to believe it. But there's so many demons in the Hindu culture. Now, here's one of the more disturbing ones that not many people know about, and this coincides with how I was talking about how the incubus and succubus can make somebody somewhat pregnant, or how the people that in Hindu that possess themselves purposely could have some type of demonic baby. So mojos are spirits, evil spirits that have some odd desire to want to live life through you. They'll want to experience things like um thrilling things like sexual experiences, um maybe even eating, or what it's like to have thrills. I don't know what they exactly want for us. If I have to guess, it would be sex. And obviously I cannot prove any of this, but from my studies, mojos hide in doorways that are cut like that. Like a lot of older buildings, you'll notice that the doors are like that. because they claim that the Mozos cannot hang on to those type of doors. But people that get severely infested with these Mozos are known to get something on them, and I don't even know if I'm going to put the picture up because it's very disturbing. But if you don't really believe me that this is very possible to have some type of artificial life grow on you, look up a teratoma tumor. Teratoma, then tumor. But I usually don't talk about Carlson, but this is you won't forget what you see from that. But if you want more, um, if you feel like there needs to be more proof about my claims, then I guess go ahead. So next I'm gonna talk about the golem. So the golem is about alchemy. So there's physical alchemy, which is about turning one substance into another, the ultimate goal being lead to gold or different substances to turn to gold, or the philosopher's stone, which is to live forever, which I believe a lot of people have achieved. I think that Saint Germain did it, maybe Nicholas Flamel, and possibly some others. But a golem is when you create an artificial soul, and even though this soul might be living, talking, breathing, it does not have the spirit that God puts in a vessel. So that it really, even though it might be artificially alive, it is not truly alive. But so a golem, you have to have a type of body or vessel to put it in. Like the best example I can give you is Full Metal Alchemist, to where Edward, I believe it's his brother, he puts in that armor suit. Then there's a homunculi. A homunculi is where you it's a complete artificial life form, and sometimes it will be from reanimating body parts, or sometimes it will literally just come to life in itself. And I would say probably the biggest authority on homunculi would probably be Paracelsus. Um, he was alive about 500 or 600 years ago. He claimed to have 10 at once, and there's a story about a Jewish man in Prague. I think it was like the 15 or 1600s. He successfully created a golem, and when Hitler invaded the town that he did it in, I believe the basement of that church was the only place he did not let his men go, because Hitler understood that this stuff was real. But apparently, with the homunculi, it's it takes 40 days as a mixture of semen and urine that has to be boiled at a certain thing. It's very weird, but it is real. I can assure you. And these things are not from God whatsoever. So I don't think anyone watching this will ever be encounter something like this. But just in case, if you do, or if you are attempting this, please, in the name of Christ, stop. Then there's let's talk about vampires. A lot of people do not think that they exist, but there gets a point in someone's life when they get far enough in Satanism where they have to either pick the path of a werewolf or a vampire. And the majority of people pick a vampire because it's a lot less painful. And it is true that that they don't like sunlight. They don't that crumble up and die, but it makes them feel sick. The garlic thing mostly is true. um now they don't turn into bats or like go into mist and slide under the door, but they do have an addiction of blood, and a lot of times they'll have covens, and they'll use the girls in the coven to get some to bite some of their blood, and it's very bad. And then there is the werewolves. The werewolves are a lot rarer. A lot of times the Satanists will use them for a assassin. And just so people and don't think that any of this is real. If you believe the Bible, then you have to at least acknowledge the possibility of these things still being around. You don't have to say that I'm 100% right. I believe I am from my research because I've probably done close to 100,000 hours of research on all these different topics. So let's see, Daniel chapter Daniel chapter 4 verse 33. This is lycanthropy. That very hour the word was fulfilled concerning Nebuchadnezzar. He had driven from men and ate grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers and his nails like birds' claws. And like I said, with how the vampires are different than what you feel in what like Hollywood makes them out to be, that the vampires are different too, but there is evidence in the Word of God about the vampires too, and a lot of people start to discredit me because it's in Proverbs, but Proverbs is not completely allegorical or 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 metaphors. While a lot of it is parables, parables can have truth to them as well. Here it is. Proverbs 30:14. There is a generation whose teeth are like swords and whose fangs are like knives to devour the poor from off the earth and the needy from among men. And I've said in my testimony before, I promise I never did anything violent or anything, but just because of certain sexual kinks that involved a little bit of blood, and like I said, no violence, no cutting, nothing like that. You can probably guess what it was. And my eye teeth grew significantly from that. Thankfully, I never had any addiction to blood or anything, but I got my punishment in many ways. So, oh yeah, and the werewolves, a lot of times, like I said, they'll be used as assassins for satanic searches because they can't, because it looks like there's really no evidence because most of they just got killed by a wild animal. Now, pixies were not are not cute things like they're made out to be, like Tinkerbell or something like that. They did look cute in people's um description of them, but they lured specifically men out, and they were never the same again either. Same with fairies. Fairies were typically a little bit bigger and kind of more sexualized looking type of things, but it's all an illusion. Um, they possess specifically men and took over their body as well. And then there's the Great White Lodge. So the Great White Lodge is a lot of people have wrote about this, and I believe that's probably true. Is um high-ranking members of the Astar Command that's infiltrated the government, and if you look it up, there's is plenty of um documents showing that Eisenhower made a deal with the so-called extraterrestrials when they're interterrestrials um quite a while ago, and then that's when the technology boomed, and there's rumors and a lot of information that they probably did it a second time as well, and I personally think we have. Then there's planet demons, and I'm not gonna explain it all, but the planets, the 7 planets in the sky, they're not planets. They do look a little bit different. I'll put up what they actually look like. They are stars. The Book of Enoch talks about how there's about different stars and Earth that we worship them, and it implies that they're imprisoned for 10,000 years. But there is in black magic, they'll do specific magic on days when the planet is the star that they believe is a planet is aligned in a certain way. Saturn is the most evil of all the planets. Um, and these all do have energy, and people can be possessed by them as well. So, Mapungo. So Mapungo is something else in the Palo Mayambe, the Palo Mayambe religion, which is a darker form of Santeria, which are their type of elemental spirits. Um, my research shows that it's just different names in a different culture. Then the Palo Mayombe, there's also Nifumbe, which they claim to be spirits of the dead. So it's their form of familiar spirits, and they can absolutely possess you. I stress the familiar spirits over and over again because they can easily get a hold of you because people don't want to let go of their loved ones, and they feel like if they stop communicating with these things, then that's it. But I know it's hard, it's grieving, but we cannot entertain these things. Then on an eagle, and it is Santeria, spirits of the dead as well. So it's another name for a different religion, but the Santeria stuff is usually a lot darker because the difference is the people that's in Santeria, they're doing things daily that's inviting these evil spirits into their life. Christians, they might accidentally do it, but when you're openly having idols around your house doing evil incantations every day, it's much easier to get possessed by these things. And then the last one I want to talk about is the old ones, which I completely believe are real, that H.P. Lovecraft talked about. And they were basically drawings of what's believed to be the secret chiefs. And some of them are completely horrifying looking. They're some of the worst things people some people that showed them, they said the worst thing they've ever seen, and that's probably the appearance of what you're dealing with. That's sort of the top of this hierarchy. The top of this hierarchy, the top two is the seven, which is seven very powerful evil spirits that are Satan's top seven fallen angels. Then at the top is obviously Satan. But if I would have to guess, I would say right under the seven is probably the secret chiefs, then I would say the Astar Command, the Great White Brotherhood, then the Ascended Masters, then the Secret Chiefs. No, I mean sorry, Ascended Masters, then the Mahatmas, then the lower type of stuff is the Tosions, the Jinns, um, uh, the Greys, alcohol, the Incubus, Succubus, Loa, Animism, Preta, Parahumans, and then the lowest is, I would say, is the Shadow Demons, Invisible Demons, stuff like that. And like I said, this video is to let people know that there is many different things that can be bothering them. If anybody has any questions about anything that's not on here, or just any questions about any of these things, if you feel like these will be affecting your life, please comment and I will make a way for you to contact me. This is not about entertainment, it is about education and hopefully helping somebody. Have a good rest of the night. May the Lord Yahuwah bless you.